statues of Margaret Thatcher in Westminster. Here's the statue of Britain's first female Prime Minister in the members' lobby just by the House of Commons chamber. But should there be one outside the building in Parliament Square, alongside those of Churchill, Disraeli, Abraham Lincoln and Mahatma Gandhi? Well, the Scottish Lib Dem MP Jo Swinson, who says she's no fan of Mrs Thatcher, has argued it's time for her to be recognised and says there's a hint of misogyny in the vitriol aimed against her. But not everyone agrees. The First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, was asked about it at the weekend and replied, "Steady on." So, should she be recognised? And if not, why not? The SNP MP Alison Thewlis joins us now. Should there be a statue of her in Parliament Square?
I think that's a matter for Westminster Council. That's their decision whether to grant that or not. But from my point of view, there's certainly lots of other women that could be honoured before Margaret Thatcher. There's already a statue, as you've said, within Parliament, and we need to look at the broad spectrum of women that could be honoured in such a way as having a statue. Right.
She was the first female Prime Minister in Britain. Isn't that a big deal?
It is a big deal, but you have to look at that wider context. And certainly if you were to put the statue in Glasgow, it's not something I think my constituents would welcome, given the impact that she had on the economy of Scotland.
But this is to stand alongside Churchill in Parliament Square. Would that not be appropriate?
I think it's fine to say that you honour the first female MP, first female Prime Minister. That's absolutely fine. But as I said, there's a statue already in Parliament, and there's lots of other women that also need to be honoured for their part in politics and their part in public life.
So who are you suggesting?
Well, there's lots of different women that could be honoured, and on Thursday this week we're seeing a statue in Glasgow unveiled for Mary Barber, who was a rights campaigner. She campaigned against the rent strikes in Glasgow, one of Glasgow's first female councillors. So Glasgow's addressing the issue of there not being that many women honoured in politics and honoured by statues in the city, and they publicly funded that statue as well. So it was crowd-funded to raise this statue as well, which I think is important.
Right. But why are you against the idea of the first woman Prime Minister? I mean, she obviously broke that glass ceiling. She made it to the top in politics. Whatever you may think about what she did or didn't do for women, should that not just be honoured in its own right in the way Jo Swinson has said it's about gender equality?
As I said, there's no reason why that can't be honoured, and it's a decision of the council whether or not they want to go ahead and allow for that statue to be raised. The argument there's not enough room in Parliament Square seems absolutely daft. It's a big square, and you could certainly put as many statues as you like in there.
Teresa Villiers.
Well, I think the reason probably for the fact that Mrs Thatcher's statue isn't already in Parliament Square is less to do with gender and more to do with the fact that those statues only tend to be erected some time after an individual has died, and certainly many years after they've left politics. But I think it's a good idea to commemorate our first woman Prime Minister with a statue in Parliament Square, not least because whilst her premiership was polarising and aspects of it are controversial, she did transform the economy of this country. You know, she turned the country round from what looked like terminal decline, and we are all far better off as a result of that. So that's one of the reasons why she should be considered as a candidate for a statue in Parliament Square.
Right, but to be honoured as a woman as the first female Prime Minister, surely she had to do something for women. Dawn Butler, the Shadow Women and Equalities Minister, said last year that female Tory Prime Ministers, that we've done absolutely nothing for women. I mean, should politicians really accept that if they hadn't done anything for the rights of women, then why should they be honoured in that way?
Mrs Thatcher enabled millions of women to start their own business, to get jobs they wouldn't otherwise have got, to buy their own council house. There are a whole range of things that she did for women in this country. So I think she is deserving of a statue.
Alison Thewlis?
I would disagree with just about most of those points, given the impacts, the economic impact on Scotland, the long-term impact on women in Scotland. When you see the impact of ill health and inequality still lagging behind in Scotland as a result of the devastation that was wreaked in Scotland industries. And I grew up in Lanarkshire, where the Ravenscraig plant closed, and many women were put on the poverty line as a result of that. There's a long-standing post-industrial legacy in Scotland that is recognised in the health inequalities we still see.
But are party politics getting in the way here, Alison Thewlis? Is it that women, female politicians on the left, do not want to honour a woman politician on the right, and particularly someone like Margaret Thatcher, who many will argue was very, very divisive? Do you think ideology here is getting in the way? Harriet Harman, former deputy leader of the Labour Party, said that Margaret Thatcher was not a sister.
I think there's plenty, as I said, there's plenty of other women you could go about honouring. You know, there's plenty of women through the suffragette women, through the causes for equal rights.
Sure, but
lots of different women.
What's the answer to the question?
Why?
Do you think there is a problem with women on the left trying to honour somebody like Margaret Thatcher from the right?
Well, I think there's a question for women on the right as well as to which women on the left that they would honour. It shouldn't be divisive in that way. It should be which women do we want to recognise from all sectors, not just from politics as well. And the Glasgow Women's Library in Glasgow are great at recognising women right across the board through fields of science and engineering and arts and everything, that you could raise a statue to any of those women.
Right, you talked about her legacy in terms of women voters, or some women voters, but in terms of what she did for women in politics, would you accept that it fell short of what she could have done in terms of the ladder for women underneath her?
We certainly made more progress in more recent years, but that's been a slow sort of process in many democracies around the world. I mean, it is certainly the dramatic increase in the numbers of women in Parliament.
But she had the power to do something much more, didn't she?
I think I certainly would very much have wanted, you know, the remedy of the imbalance to have started more quickly in politics than it did, but that shouldn't detract from the fact of Mrs Thatcher's huge achievements in a whole range of spheres.
But for all the years she was in power, she only promoted one other woman to the cabinet. That's a pretty poor record, isn't it?
I think the bigger problem was there wasn't enough effort made to get more women to stand for Parliament, to select more women candidates for the Conservative Party. So the reality is there were very few women MPs to promote. And I would certainly acknowledge that it took the whole political class too long to wake up to what a problem that was. And I'm glad that dramatic progress, has been made since.
What about a statue of Nicola Sturgeon?
I think that would be fine. It's not funny, that. But she is Scotland's first female First Minister. We recognise the first Minister in Scotland in the statue
Margaret
of Donald
Thatcher was the first female Prime Minister.
And she has a statue already. Donald Dewar was the first Minister in Scotland. He has a statue at the top of Buchanan Street in Glasgow as the first female First Minister in Scotland. I'm sure in time that may well come, but she's still serving at the moment. You don't usually put up statues of serving politicians, so I think that's maybe something for the future.
Alison Thewlis, thank you.